Hi, everybody. Victoria Ali here with everyonecounts.world. I'm a life navigator, self-help addict, and author of Survival 101, which is available in all formats on all your favorite stores. In any case, what we're here today is to talk about Money Week. I'm so excited. Money Week is probably one of my most fun things to talk about. In fact, I'm sure we'll talk about it more this year than just on this week. But my history with the money situation is that I really didn't think I was doing too badly after college. I learned how to have a job really early, like at 12 or 13, and worked at the Columbian Hotel here in my hometown as a general maid. And several times my dad ended up getting us jobs, some of which was pretty much child labor, like tearing off roofs for $1, that kind of thing. Anyway, I did learn the value of being able to earn income, and I'll never forget the first time I got that first paycheck. And I can't remember how much it was, but I basically cashed my paycheck and went over to the local Five and Dime. That's a little kind of a store like Target, only back in the day it was called Houseman Drugs. And I bought I'll never forget, I bought a grilled cheese sandwich with pickles on the side and chips and a Dr. Pepper. And that was my first spending that I ever did based on my own money. And I think I was about 13 years old, maybe 14 at the outside. And I had done jobs before, but that's the first one that really made that shift in my thinking. And I got a little bit hooked on the idea that, oh, I see how this works. So that was my original exposure to earning income. And then as I kept going, I learned more, but I got myself stuck in places. Like I got myself stuck thinking, oh, I can only work in housekeeping or food service. And so then it really was stressful for me when I tried to get a job working in an office typing. I remember one job I had, I just kept making mistakes and I kept throwing the papers out at night in different baskets. Although I had some skills in typing, I just was so nervous. I was sabotaging my efforts. And so it took me a little bit longer to get into working in an office. And in any case, I know we're talking about money today and not necessarily work, which is another one of my favorite topics, I have to say. So we'll be talking about that more as well. But essentially what happened is somewhere along the line, I graduated from college, I was paying student loans, and I was doing okay. I wasn't doing too badly, but I really hadn't ever been trained to manage my money. And I was like, I don't know, 24 years old at the time. And I had a friend that was in this club, and it was based around this book, How to Get Out of Debt, Stay Out of Debt and Live Prosperously. And in any case, I went in there and I was sitting by her and their meeting started, and I decided to stick around. And it was really funny because by the end of that meeting, I was kind of an emotional wreck. I really was used to being vague about my money, and I didn't even know how to balance my checkbook. I'm sure many of you don't either. And so that's kind of what my personal history was with the money at that point. And I was living out of a little bit of scarcity, to tell you the truth. I was, I had these tactics, like I wouldn't buy myself anything basically, and I would spend very little on food and that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden I'd go and splurge on something like going to a couple concerts. And I wasn't really making a huge amount of headway with work per se. I mean, I had an okay job. It was pretty good. And I was in sales and making a commission, primarily selling film, if anybody remembers what that is, and video equipment and animation equipment at Robert Waxman's out of Denver, Colorado. If anybody knows that company, please put it in the chat. In any case, it was a wonderful job. I stayed there for many years. But during this time is when I was getting a regular paycheck and everything. But, I had these student loans, I had all these other things. And I had a lot of things about money that I just didn't understand. And so I had the scarcity thinking about money, like, okay, it's basically, there's a shrinking pie of money available. And out of that, I'm getting a smaller and smaller sliver of that shrinking pie. So I just had this fear about money. I didn't have a real relationship with it. I didn't see it as something flowing or abundant. And so what I started to do was read this book. And a couple of us got together, a couple other women and I, and we started doing some of the exercises that are listed in this book. And one of the biggest things that we learned about was this concept of mindset, of the scarcity mindset versus the abundant mindset. So the scarcity mindset is something that I was operating out of. And like I said, and feeling like, oh my God, there's just not enough. I don't have enough. I have to be super careful. And I was worried about expenses. My whole focus was pretty much on expenses, and it was limited. The life that I had that I was looking at in front of me was kind of limited. I was saving a little money so that I could get animation equipment because I wanted to be an animator, which I did, thank God, get to do that on the side for quite a while. 3D animation, my favorite. I will put a plug in for 3D Max. It was an incredible program. In any case, back to this concept of scarcity, I had something else called deprivation thinking. I deprived myself a lot. Now, I also would at other times go on a binge and go and spend a lot. And the biggest thing that I learned as I started doing like this back to the back program and started actually looking at my money was that I had a lot of vagueness around my money. I actually didn't understand how it flowed in and out of my account. I just watched the account. I had a credit union savings account, and I did very little spending, like I said. And so I could pretty much tell what was going on. But it was very constrained lifestyle. It was very much like, I just didn't feel like I had enough. And I was always feeling like I was just one step ahead. In fact, I got behind on those student loans, and that I felt really stressed about that. I got a forbearance. I did different things. And I didn't really understand how all this was going on. And so, of course, for those of you that are still in college, be aware that whatever student loans you take out, do the math and see what those payments are going to be, because you definitely want to make sure that the job that you're getting at least will pay for your housing and your food and that kind of thing, and for these student loan payments. A lot of us get these degrees, and the degrees themselves don't have the amount of income that's really necessary for being able to pay those payments for those student loans. So be aware of that. And just remember, if you've already taken out those student loans, it's not the end of the world. That's what happened to me. In fact, I took out over half the student loans, or most of the student loans I took out were in my last year of college, because I subsidized, meaning I paid for my own internship in advertising, because advertising was hard to break into at the time. And Griff Advertising gave me a shot, and I feel so grateful for that in Boulder, Colorado. Shout out to Bob Griff and Bob Trumper and all the other people involved. Wendy Thompson, want to thank you in case you happen to be watching this podcast. In any case, so yeah, I ended up in a situation where I did get a job with that company that I interned with after I graduated, which was fantastic. But what I was dealing with was this scarcity mindset, this, fear of not having enough. At first, I didn't have to pay those loans, but then they started to kick in about a year or so later, 9 months after I graduated from college. And it's definitely a big wake-up call. And so what I started to do was realize the situation is that I really had a lot of vagueness. And that's the word that Jerrold Mundis uses in his book, is vagueness around my money. I didn't know how much was coming in. I kind of knew when my paycheck came in, and I knew when my rent was due, but I didn't really know much else. And so because of that, I found myself kind of in this backpedaling, robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of a situation. And it really came in later when I finally started getting clarity around my money. It really came in that I was able to figure out where it was going and what was happening. And I got to tell you, doing this process of getting clarity around the money is unbelievably life-changing. And it's one of those things that, why don't they spend a month out of every year growing up in school, in school, or parents or whatever, why don't they spend time actually teaching us about money? I know Rich Dad and Rich Wife also talk about this. Robert Kiyosaki and his wife talk about this. And I really appreciate, even as an older person, learning from them on their podcast as well. Check it out. But going back to how to get out of debt, stay out of debt, and live prosperously, I want to say something. A lot of you might be tuning out because you say, I don't have a lot of debt. This isn't really that valuable to me. Well, hold on to your socks, because it doesn't matter if you have a lot of debt or not. When I started actually getting together with these other two women, which I talk about in my book, Survival 101, my experience, but when I started getting together with these other two women, what happened is that we started getting clarity with our money, because there were 3 cardinal rules that Jerrold Mundis talks about. So the 3 cardinal rules that we'll be walking through in the next few videos are, number 1, not to incur any unsecured debt. So we're going to talk about, what is unsecured debt? What is debt that really might be helpful and work for me? And what's debt that works against me? And so that's the first cardinal rule, is not to incur any unsecured debt. So, put those credit cards on ice for at least 30 days while you try this out. The second cardinal rule that I learned that we'll be talking about is how to create a record of all your spending and your income. And we'll be going over that in general, and then I'll have a deeper video that goes through the actual spreadsheet and that kind of thing. And the third cardinal rule is to create a spending plan. And the first spending plan that we'll be creating will be an ideal spending plan that'll give us a little bit of vision as to how things could be. And it helps us to start getting into this concept of how to live towards abundance versus the scarcity mindset. Okay, look forward to talking with you again. Feel free to leave me some more comments or suggestions as to what you'd like to be talking about in these videos of self-help. Any books that you found that have helped you, that kind of thing. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful day, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video if you liked it. Thank you.